Welcome back to another edition of TCM Graduate TV. I'm Kenton Sepsic, registered acupuncturist. This is viewer question number 9. I got a really great question about what the tongue can actually tell us. And that turned into a really cool conversation, and I wanted to share that with you. Now, every single diagnostic we have is almost a specialty. And many of you may know that I have been training martial arts for 25, 26 years, since I was 14 years old. And I started in Wing Chun Kung Fu. I did a couple of years of amateur boxing, and I'm currently training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, if we look at martial arts, oftentimes they are specialties. So when I learned Wing Chun and learned how to box, I learned very well how to use my hands, maybe a little bit of kicking, but I became very proficient in stand-up combat. Ended up working out with a gentleman who was a blue belt, which is your second belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and once the fight went to the ground, he knew exactly what to do, and I had no chance. And my mind opened up at that point, and I thought, well, in the future, I'd really like to train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And for the last 2.5, 3 years, I've been training this martial art. Very much a take the person down to the ground, specialty on the ground kind of martial art. Well, I often look at tongue, pulse, certain diagnostics, such as asking a patient about their menstrual system. I look at those as like specialties. I can only get a little bit of information, and that's not a bad thing. But we have to know the limitations of our diagnostics so that we can ask other questions. So in regards to the tongue, I often talk about with patients, I say, listen, the tongue is the past. It takes a long time to change. It can take anywhere from you got a really, really bad head cold and you're full of snot, and now you've got this really gross, sticky coating on your tongue, and that happened a few days ago, to maybe chronic liver qi stagnation, causing chronic liver blood deficiency, liver yin deficiency, and now the coating is gone on the tongue on the sides, and we have cracking. So that would take a very long time to happen. So the tongue is the past. When I check the pulse is the very present moment. It's a snapshot. I think that's why people like Leon Hammer ended up taking a pulse for the entire time that he was doing his intake, his verbal intake, seeing how the pulse would change based on the questions that were being asked. And the initial interview, which is another digital download on my website, the initial interview is a mix of past and present. So we have past and present interview, we have tongue is the past, we have pulse is the present, and what I do is I explain to my patients what that allows me to do is zoom out and see you as an entire tree. I'm going to see branches and roots. I'm going to see the entire tree at one time. And I tell them, you're not a human, you're a tree, and what I'm looking for is commonalities. I want to see if a few branches, low back pain, soreness or weakness in the knees, hot flashes, night sweating, there's 3. I know that's a common root. That's likely kidney yin deficiency. So this is what the tongue shows us. It's the past. And it's important to remember that, because sometimes the patient will tell you verbally through the interview what's going on. You'll check the pulse and you'll go, I don't know about this whole tongue business. And that's why it's a very important saying in Chinese medicine, treat what you see, or treat what's going on, like right in front of you, because that's the snapshot of the now. And there's certain herbalists that practice this way, and they only give herbs for 3 to 4 days because they believe and they practice that the condition is going to change quite quickly. So it's important to remember that the tongue is the past, and there's also a little bit of, if you know where somebody's been, you likely know where they're going. So it's not like the patient just came to you and all of a sudden turned their lifestyle on a dime, on a 180, and all of a sudden is brand new. So by looking at the past, you can often dictate how someone's future is going to go. Let's erase this and talk about what the tongue can say. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, I diagnose according to a 4-step process: color, coating, cracking, and shape. And I do this in order so that I don't forget anything. Color, let's start with that. Let's see what color can show us. Well, we could have a red tongue, and that would be heat. We could have a pale tongue, and of course it would need to be wet, but it could show us cold. A pale tongue is generally regarded as a normal tongue. We could have blood deficiency. Again, another reason to see that we would see a pale tongue. And we could also see a blood stagnation. So if a purple tongue was present. So color shows hot, cold, blood deficiency, and blood stagnation. Coating. Coating can show heat if there's a yellow coating. It can also show damp if there's a thick white coating. And it can also show yin deficiency. If the tongue coating is starting to come off, it would slowly be regarded as stomach yin deficiency. And then if it was peeled off in certain areas, you could say that the liver is having a yin deficiency concern. Cracking, again, is yin deficiency. And if it's cracked all over, then it's likely a stomach yin and or a kidney yin deficiency. Or it can be actually cracked just on the sides. We have teardrop cracks, etc. And speaking of which, teardrop cracks is a great example of emotional spiritual concerns. So someone could have a heart crack. Their heart has been broken. Someone could have teardrop cracks. They could be suffering from history of grieving and sadness. And last but not least, we have the shape. So the shape could very well show us dampness by being swollen, dampness and phlegm. Could be a blood deficiency. Could be thin this way, could be thin that way. Could show yin deficiency overall, kind of tied in with the whole blood deficiency thing. And mental, emotional as well, especially in terms of like a hammerhead tongue or a forked tongue. And shape could also describe a quivering tongue and could also show a deviated tongue, but we're not going to get into that. If you want more information, you can definitely jump into my workbook. You can jump into the 4-step tongue diagnosis digital download, and Matt Choach has got great stuff on it too. But basically what this shows, if we summarize everything, this is showing us two things. The state of the stomach chi. That's when someone shows you their tongue and you're looking at the state of their stomach chi. And what does that mean really? Has to do with Shen. Same idea, patient walks into your clinic, you look in their eyes, you see if they have a sparkle in their eye, you see if they hold themselves proudly and confidently, the way they dress, the way they walk, what their gait looks like. We're always looking for Shen. So all this basically means is how's the spirit of their tongue? And of course the tongue is a microcosm of the macrocosm. It's a micro representation of the entire body, so we can get a good idea of how someone's Shen is by looking at their tongue. I hope this helps you figure out what the tongue can say, and you can do this with everything. You can do this with what the pulse can say or what the pulse can feel like. We can look at, again, as I mentioned before, what the menstrual system is generally tied to. The menstrual system is often tied to the liver and blood. When we ask about sleep, what systems are we asking about? And over time, you'll become an expert in these micro-diagnostics, and then again, it'll help you zoom out and see the person as a whole tree. Just want to remind you that safety is king, bedside manner is king, and results are king in that order. Thanks for watching this video.